one word that you felt seeing it, what would that be?
Empowered.
Ooh, I like that. Power. I like that a lot.
Encourage.
Courage.
Seek more into my ancestors.
There we go. 'Cause how many times don't we do that, right?
Exactly. Can I offer another word?
You sure can.
Motivated.
Ooh.
I say rename. Just, you want me to elaborate?
Oh, yeah, I was waiting. I was like, ooh, rethink.
My one word is rethink, but I just say it gives you an alternate perspective of whatever your prior knowledge was or wherever you were thinking. It gives you a different angle, just to see a different light. Not all truths. Everybody got there's three sides to the truth, I guess. So it's all an alternative perspective. Yeah, so I have two really good. Exposed or unveiled. You know, just exposing truths or things that have been covered up. Finally bringing it to light. That type of thing.
Go ahead.
Depth.
Yeah.
It's so good to look at American history just through one family. And it provides access and to the realities of it in such a meaningful way.
There's a lot of other adjacent stories and connections in other communities that, you know, deserve to be told just as much as this film, but yeah, that's the hope, to inspire other folks to just take their own family history into their own hands. Yes.
I have a word, and my word is joy. My grandmother, I'm her representative. My grandmother was born in 1896. The midwives and the women in her family who caught her little body when it came into the world were her great-grandmother and her great-aunts, who were children sold in 1838 to Louisiana. So my grandmother was born into a family of young people who made that journey to Louisiana and welcomed her into the world and put the story of Ann Joyce and the Poppaw Queen into her because they knew their family here in Maryland. So when I came along, my grandmother told me the same story. And people out in the country, in the Queen family, who are descendants, other descendants of those Queen family members, we all got the same story. So it's connecting threads through time. It's a beautiful thing.
Ooh, you gotta take that in for me.
I would say my word is validation. And we are descendants of the Queen family from Prince George's County. And we didn't get the tale that, well, I don't think my mom got those stories coming down through her lineage, but just throughout the years, going on the internet, just trying, because I've always said, I feel like our family, we were the first, like really originals here, and trying to find things online, and I could get like little bits and pieces of stories, and then I just shared some things with my son, and he's why we're here today, you know, so like seeing some bits and pieces that he and I were able to find. I've heard of some of those stories online years before where people were putting it out there, and just coming to see and hear you, it just kind of gives validation that, you know what, this really is some of the story of the lineage where we come from and how we really are. We own Maryland, just like you said, it's like we are the ones, the backbone of the state, you know, just through our lineage, so.
And seven years ago, none of us were having these conversations.
Oh, wow.
7 years later, because a story, New York Times, Richard Cellini, looked for descendants. There was always this story in America that black people won't be able to connect with their family stories because of enslavement. You don't have last names, you don't have this, there's that brick wall, there's all of that. None of that is true. It is a fabrication by people who actually now, genealogy, Americans are the most interested people in genealogy in the whole world. Because we've made it part of the culture of Americanness right now. So for all those years that black people were told, no, you'll never know, on Ancestry and the Georgetown Memory Project, and we have these family stories that we just don't talk enough about. And I'm old, I'm the old people in my family now, you know, so if we're not talking to our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and nieces and nephews about our families, then they have no connection to who we are and who they are. So we have to continue to tell the story of who we are in America, even though nobody might believe you. Or somebody might tell you you are something different than who you know you are. Mary Queen never stopped. Never stopped. And her generations haven't stopped either.
And I think that's the beauty in it. You know, there's the African proverb, when an ancestor dies, a library burns to the ground. And it's so true, because how many of us have not talked about anything? We can go back to maybe our great-great-grandmother, and then it stops. And then what do you do from there? But all it takes is a thread to make a garment. So who's pulling the thread?
It made me think of a phrase. My parents are not from here. They're from Nicaragua, the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua. And so when you want to know about a person, you ask, who them fa? Who you fa? So that's like, who was their family? Who were they related to? And for years, my mom has always said, you know, she said, oh, we're not African, we're indigenous to Nicaragua. And I was like, Mom, you don't know what you're talking You don't know what you're talking about. The history books say this, say that. And so recently, just last month, I went to visit them, and I made it a point I was going to go to the museums that were there. And I ran into a tour guide there, and we had a great conversation. And that's what he talked about. He was like, you know, the black people here are indigenous to this country, and he's telling me all about the different tribes. And it made me think about what my mom was saying. You know, she didn't necessarily have any documentation to prove or anything like that, but that was her story, and that is what she stuck to. She's like, no, we're indigenous to here. And so I really appreciated the story of Mary Queen, you know, fighting in court to say, this is who I am, and I don't care what Mr. Duval has to say. This is who I am, and this is where I come from. So I just really loved the whole documentary. It was good information.
Thank you.
I know, I'm so full, I'm just.
This is, for me, it's like, at least the whole creative process is just like people reading your own diary, like your own personal, just work. And so it's a process for me trying to detach myself from it, because I've been so enveloped in it for what, a year and
A little over a year.
whatever time is. But yeah, and particularly this past 2 months have just been nothing but daytime, you know, getting things done, and then usually around 7, 8 o'clock it's clock in because it's Poppaw Queen time. So
How do
that's
you deal
been-
with your emotions around that? That's gotta be a lot to carry, 'cause
I think that's the other part has been challenging. There were periods of it. The beginning, finding out about the history was one thing, and that was a thing within itself. And then fast forwarding to doing like the pre-interviews where I got to meet a lot of amazing individuals that have been doing this work, some of which are featured in this documentary, some that were just fortunate just to provide history and their knowledge, their experience, and I was able to kind of just weave together the story. I mean, I wrote down what I wanted the documentary to look like, and then these individuals helped kind of just fill in the gaps. That was a lot within itself, because I think I did that within a month period. So I did maybe 16 to 20 interviews within a month, and that is a lot. I mean, 2-3 hours per person, getting their stories, and it was overwhelming in itself. Took a break after that, then we started shooting, and then after us finishing just in March of this year, since then it's just been going through all the footage, and I mean the poetry was, I think I already told you about the poetry, how that kind of took me out. Because I was there when we shot it, but it really didn't sit in my brain in terms of what they were saying, because I'm in camera, director mode, and trying to get the shot, trying to be on time, trying to get in and get out. But editing it from start to finish and going through the words, and each bar, each stanza was just more powerful than the last one, and I was just kind of stuck with the words, because that was taking me in a different direction in terms of a different creative route, in terms of what other projects can we do that kind of relate to this type of work, but trying to stay focused was hard, really hard, just because, again, 6+ hours of footage within 2 months was just, I'm not doing this again.
I'm gonna say, you have to live life, right? You have to go and be a parent,
I mean,
employee, and
the
all
creative
that
process
stuff.
was fun, but I'm not editing ever again. The amount of stress I was under the past 24 hours, I'm surprised I'm still here. But
You're meant to be here.
all that to say, I think it was, of course, worth it, but yeah, a lot of things I've learned about myself through understanding her story in terms of what her descendants are capable of and what a lot of us still have that she came to this country with. And I definitely appreciate this whole process.
Got a question? Go ahead.
It's kind of less of a question as much of a statement and an acknowledgement. I would just like to say that I'm very proud of him, you know, just me being outside looking in, and it's really hard for him, you know, just the hard work and the dedication and just the commitment. And we're all hard critics, you know, but I just want you to know that you did your thing, and you should be very proud of yourself. We're proud of you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
And you can now breathe.
Oof. Right about that.
Take the day off tomorrow.
I just might. Starting now.
Any other questions before we close it out? Yeah, go ahead.
When you asked us for a word, I think my word was moved, especially at the beautiful words. Could you tell us a bit about the process of writing the poetry for the film?
Yeah, of course. First of all, the word moved is a great word. When we got the direction from Malachi, it was maybe 5 or 6 words that he kind of wanted to encompass in each chapter. I know for me, the writing process is always, I like to pray first, because as a writer, you become like a conduit. So you're a vessel to something. You want it to be the right something, because, you know, something's out there that's not so good. But I always want to make sure I'm giving the person what they're asking for, but also touching somebody at the same time. So I just let it go and writing with Austin was super easy. That was the biggest thing too, because sometimes people don't write the same and it gets hard. But the process was, I didn't write the poems wrote themselves, and I was just the vessel that put them on paper. That's the easiest way I can describe it, if that makes sense. But it was definitely a labor of love. It was a lot of fun. And I was so happy at the end when you were like, this is what I wanted, because that's always, you run the risk of having to go back and edit, but we didn't have to do that, so.
There was very little tweaking with everything that you all presented, just because it kind of exceeded my expectation. I didn't even realize it until, like I said, looking at it later. But I definitely knew that coming in between the both of you that it's going to happen the way I envisioned. But like I said, it definitely exceeded my expectations. And I was just, it created the glue for the documentary that I was looking for, because I wanted something unique to kind of just blend the chapters together, because people talking from start to finish can be overwhelming for a lot of people, and I like to be stimulated through different forms of storytelling, like poetry or just music or sounds, words, and adding the poetry was just exactly what you said. It was a spiritual thing, because y'all definitely channeled something in someone, because the words that you all had so much weight and wisdom to it that I'm like, I would like to know who they were channeling. I want to talk to them, have a conversation with them, because that was literally one of the just a few things that I wrote down to both of them was just, I wanted to, definitely the Queen poem that starts the film. Technically it wasn't supposed to start the film, but because it had so much, it was just a perfect way to start the film. So I moved that all the way up to the front, and that was just supposed to be Rena, or just, Rena being the vessel for Mary Queen herself in terms of telling her story through her own lens in 2024. And the other poems were kind of similar to that, taking the forms of other ancestors and kind of just telling their experience to us in terms that we can hopefully understand. But yeah, I just can't thank y'all enough, because that, like, y'all were stressing me out. I'm just like, wow, this is it.
Yeah, that was, we would get on Zoom and we would say one word, one line, we'd read out your words, and then all of a sudden we were just taking off. It was just happening, and it was happening so organically that there is that fear there, especially if you're any type of perfectionist. You're like, okay, this is, no, he's not gonna like this at all. And then
It was perfect.
it was just seamless, it happened, so.
Beautiful harmony, synergy. Yeah.
I'm glad it turned out as beautifully as it did, because that was a real fear. Oh, man.
Awesome. Any other questions or feedback?
Well, I got something. I think y'all, I want to commend you. It was a really good documentary, and it's good information. I think it, kind of back to what I was saying with my rethink, it gives like a lot of critical thought, or makes people have to do a lot of critical thinking. And then as far as like self-identification, like, or how you perceive yourself, it is very big as far as what you're gonna give out to the world. So like, seeing other people knowing I come from France, I come from over here, as an American black person especially, we don't have the sense of necessarily knowing, or having a home base, I should say. So like, there's not necessarily like a identification, or like a background of what organic us looks like. So like, this is a good like source point, or like a space where you can get factual information that takes you back a little further than you had access to. So like, I think that does like a lot for even just how you perceive the world. I think that's big, because who knows, like she was explaining, she was saying her family's indigenous to Nicaragua, knowing that like even, you don't even need a paddle to get from Western Africa to get to South America. You can naturally, the currents will just take you there. Opens your mind to just even understanding where you were even picked off from, or where you became enslaved. So that's just a good base point, but it even goes further back. So it's like, I think this is a cool way to have some sort of base. Yeah.
Got chills.
Just
Yeah.
to go on what he said, when Poppaw Queen, just the strength. I always say, like, the women in our family are so, they're so strong and so strong personalities. And when I was hearing it in there, I was like, oh, that's what we get. That's us,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
so just that, you know, when Monty said that, that just made me kind of think of how I was feeling as I was watching certain portions of that.
I was about to say, I know for a fact, I live with them, so.
But that's gotta be tough, to know you're free. You're this person that is like, everything where you were at, that you have to keep explaining it to people every time they take you somewhere else, they do something else to you, and you can't break. You've gotta keep saying it. That's a strength that we can't even fathom.
Yeah.
You know, for me too, in looking at Queen Mary's life, before coming here to Maryland, and Anne Joyce's life in the 1680s, before coming here to Maryland, they were international travelers. They were women who traveled the world of their own volition. Nobody made, nobody made them, or if it was a situation, they actually advocated and made choices for themselves. Anne Joyce, born on Barbados, went to England, came to America with the Calverts, and established the colony of Maryland in generations. So we have written a narrative about Black people in America that says the only way Black people came into America was being trafficked and enslaved, or enslaved. That is factually incorrect. There were Black people who did not come here in chains, but because slavery was created in the bodies of Black women here in this place, slavery in this place is an American institution. And when you look at me and you and all of us in this room as descendants of people who have been here for 4 centuries, we look like Americans. That's what we look like.